On a family trip, my mom, whom I'll call Linda, suddenly snatched my purse and announced, "We're charging everything to your card for this vacation." I couldn't help but grin as I replied, "Then you're in for a surprise from the bank." The moment she saw the alert, her face went pale and she started yelling. That was the instant I realized this trip was headed for disaster. There she was, standing in the middle of the airport terminal, clutching my purse like she'd just hit the jackpot, with that same self-satisfied smirk she always wore when things didn't go her way, declaring once again, "We're charging everything to your card for this vacation." She had a grin like she'd pulled off the biggest heist ever. I just smiled back, knowing it must have thrown her off. Then I whipped out my phone, opened my banking app, and held the screen up for her to see. "Get ready, because the bank's about to show you something you won't like," I said. Her expression instantly drained of color as her eyes darted over the screen, and then she began screaming. But let's rewind a bit. I was raised with a lot of no's echoing in my head, and every part of me wanted to refuse, but I knew if I did, I'd end up being labeled as the selfish daughter who didn't care about family, especially given all the guilt trips, emotional manipulation, and constant calls. So I went along with it, but I set one rule. I'd book my own flight and reserve my own hotel room. No shared rooms, no way for them to touch my money. I wasn't about to let them take advantage of me. Linda hated that. She sulked and complained, but eventually she gave in, or so I thought. Fast forward to our arrival at the airport. I was already worn out from mentally bracing myself for Linda's next stunt during the flight. And sure enough, as soon as we reached baggage claim, she made her move. She yanked my purse right out of my hands and, with that familiar tone, repeated, "We're charging everything to your card for this vacation," all smug and triumphant. I didn't even flinch. I just smiled, pulled out my phone, and reopened my banking app. I held the screen up again. Her eyes skimmed the message. Then she read it once more before erupting in a fit of screams. I knew this was coming. Years of watching Linda's relentless antics had taught me to be ready. I'd spent a long time ensuring she never got another dime from me. About a week before the trip, I had called my bank and explained everything. The financial abuse, the manipulation, the lengths Linda would go to get at my money. The bank rep was sympathetic and, more importantly, offered help. Together, we put in place some strict security measures. My card was now locked to my location, meaning any charge made outside a set area would be flagged and declined unless I personally approved it via the app. For extra security, I also set my daily spending limit to exactly $1. When Linda saw the new settings on my phone, her grip on my purse tightened until her knuckles went white. "What did you do?" she hissed. I just shrugged and said, "Bank security." They thought it was odd that all these big charges were coming from a place I hadn't even visited yet. Her face twisted in anger. "Fix it right now," she demanded. But Linda was never one to accept defeat gracefully. She was already scheming her next move. When I checked into my hotel, I felt a rush of pride. I made sure my room was on a different floor from where my parents were staying. I needed my own space, a buffer zone. However, the next morning, things took a turn for the worse. I was startled awake by banging on my door, not just a knock, but a full-on battering, like someone was trying to force their way in. Groaning, I rolled out of bed and peered through the peephole. It was Linda, furious as ever. Before I could fully brace myself, she began yelling through the door, "Open up right now. We need to talk." I debated whether to ignore her, but I knew that wouldn't end well. So I cracked the door open just an inch, keeping the chain locked. Through the gap, she shoved a crumpled slip of paper. "The front desk says our card was declined. We can't check into our room." "Fix it," she snapped. I looked at her and said, "We didn't prepay." She scoffed. "Why would we? We were going to use your card." I almost burst out laughing, but ended up just handing back the paper. "Sounds like your problem," she snapped, slamming her fist against the doorframe. "Do you think this is a joke? Where are we supposed to sleep?" I shrugged and replied, "Maybe you should have brought your own money." She lost it, launching into a tirade of threats, the whole 9 yards. She accused me of abandoning my family, humiliating her, and ruining the trip. And then I remembered, Dad had never stood up to her either. He'd always let her get away with it. I shook my head, thinking, not my problem, and shut the door in her face. But she wasn't finished yet. About an hour later, My phone started blowing up with calls, texts, and voicemails. I ignored them all. Soon, there was a polite knock on my door. I checked through the peephole again. This time it wasn't Linda or even Dad. It was hotel security. I sighed, already knowing what was coming. I opened the door to hear the security guard saying, "Your folks are at the front desk. They claim you stole their money and left them stranded." I let out a genuine laugh. "You're kidding, right?" He replied with no laughter. "They're insisting you let them crash in your room," he continued. "Oh, hell no." I crossed my arms. "Do they have any proof that I stole something?" He hesitated. "Well, no, but I cut him off." "Then they're lying." I booked and paid for my own room with my own money. They tried to scam me, and now they're facing the consequences. Not my problem. The guard looked uneasy. "I'm not taking sides, but they're saying they have nowhere else to go and the hotel is fully booked." I raised an eyebrow. "Not my problem." Then another voice piped up from behind him. "She's right." I stepped past the security guard and saw the hotel manager. A middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and the tired look of someone who had dealt with too many entitled guests. She turned to me and said, "I checked the system. You paid in full. However, your parents didn't. If they can't provide another form of payment, they'll have to leave." Then, from down the hall, Linda's voice shrieked, and just like that, they were gone. Later that night, I headed down to the resort bar for a drink. Just as I was starting to relax, my phone buzzed again with a notification from my bank, an attempted login from an unknown device. I sat up straight, my stomach sinking, and then another alert popped up. A password reset had been requested. My blood turned to ice as I realized what was happening. I sprinted back to my room, locked the door, and pulled up my banking app. Sure enough, someone had tried to reset my password. I immediately changed everything. New password, enabled two-factor authentication, and cranked my security alerts to the max. Then I did what I should have done long ago. I called my bank, put a fraud alert on my account, and shot Linda a text. "Nice try. Hope you enjoy the rest of your trip." No response came. The next morning, I got a call from Dad. "She's saying you locked her out of the bank," he said. I laughed. "No, I locked myself out. She was the one trying to break in." There was a moment of silence before he sighed. "You know how she gets?" "Yeah," I replied, "and I'm done with it." That's when I decided to make my final move, knowing full well Linda wouldn't take it lightly. I was tired of playing defense. It was time to strike back. For as long as I could remember, I had let Linda get away with her endless lies, stealing, and manipulation, all under the excuse that she was my mom and that family always sticks together. But her attempt to break into my bank account had crossed a line. So I made a decision. I pulled out my laptop, logged into all my accounts, and took action that would change everything. I froze my credit, meaning no new accounts, loans, or credit cards could be opened in my name without going through multiple layers of security. Then I reviewed my bank transactions and found something disturbing. Linda had already been dipping into my finances. There were a series of small withdrawals over the past 6 months. Nothing huge, just $20 here, $50 there, spaced out so I wouldn't notice right away. I felt sick. She must have found a way to access my account before the trip. Maybe she had my card details from somewhere, or maybe she convinced the teller to act on her behalf. Either way, I was done. I called my bank again, reported the fraud, and requested a full audit of every account in my name. They reissued my card, changed my security questions, and blocked every single device that had ever logged into my account, even mine. It was like nuclear-level security. Then I texted Linda, "Hey Mom, just so you know, I found all the money you took. The bank is investigating now, so expect a call soon." Her reply was instant. "How dare you? We're family. I didn't steal anything. You're being crazy." I ignored her and moved on to the next step. I called Dad, knowing he'd never come to my defense, but I needed to hear it from him. "Dad," I said as soon as he answered, "did you know Mom was taking money from me?" There was silence, then a long sigh. "She told me you were helping us out," he murmured. I said, "I didn't ask any questions. I just knew." Another pause. Then he said, "Well, the bank isn't okay with it." His tone shifted. "Wait, what did you do?" I replied, "I reported it as fraud. The bank's investigating." His voice caught. You can't do that." I gritted my teeth and said, "Watch me." Then the biggest twist hit. About an hour later, my younger sibling, whom I'll call Alex, called. Alex, the golden child who always got special treatment, answered hesitantly. Mom did it to me too, Alex whispered shakily. I just checked my account. She took a lot of money. Hundreds, maybe more. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about me. Linda had been stealing from both of us. It hit me hard. She hadn't planned to use my card for the trip at all. She had already drained all the cash we had. That explained why she had no backup plan and couldn't pay for their room. She had burned through everything, and now she was in deep trouble. If she thought I was a problem, she had no idea what was coming. Unlike me, Alex wasn't used to swallowing betrayal. I had spent years trying to keep the peace with Linda's constant control, but Alex couldn't handle the deceit. When Alex discovered that Linda had taken money from them too, something snapped. They were furious. Really, really furious. And that's when our real revenge began. We weren't going to let her get away with it quietly. We agreed to let her face the consequences. Step 1. Let her dig her own grave. We kept quiet at first, letting Linda think she'd gotten away with it. She was still fuming over being locked out of my accounts, unaware that Alex had discovered the stolen funds. We ignored her calls and let her panic. By the next day, she was desperate, sending text after text. I don't deserve this. I'm your mother. You owe me respect. This is all your fault for abandoning us. We have no money because of you. Classic manipulation. Then came the next move. I called the bank and told them she made a mistake and that they'd unfreeze everything. I couldn't help but laugh, knowing that the bank had already flagged her account. I had spoken to the fraud department personally. They knew she was lying. But that wasn't even the best part. Step 2. Hit her where it hurts. While Linda was busy blowing up my phone, Alex was busy digging into her entire financial history. What they discovered was even worse. Linda wasn't just bad with money. She was drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out, late fees piling up, personal loans everywhere. She was using our money just to keep afloat. It wasn't just a vacation scam. She was stealing to survive, and she had no clue we were onto her. So we devised a plan. Step 3. Set the trap. Alex called Linda, and I listened in on speakerphone. Mom, Alex said in a trembling but believable voice, I don't know what to do. I just checked my account, and a ton of money is missing. Linda didn't skip a beat. Oh, honey, she replied with fake sympathy. That's awful. Are you sure you didn't accidentally spend it? Alex played along. No, I'm certain someone stole it. Oh, sweetheart, don't worry, she cooed. I'll help you figure out. I almost had to cover my mouth to stop from laughing. She really believed she could sweet-talk her way out of this. Then Alex dropped the bomb. The bank is already investigating. They're tracking where the money went, so I guess we'll know soon. There was a long, painful silence before Linda's voice turned cold and panicked. You didn't have to do that. Why would you do this? Alex asked innocently. If it's just a mistake, they'll fix it, right? More silence. Then she snapped. You ungrateful little brat. Bingo. Step 4. The public meltdown. We were done being nice. Alex went straight to the hotel manager and explained everything. The stolen cash, the fraud, the lies. They even showed proof of text where Linda admitted it all. The manager was furious, not at us, but at Linda. It turned out she'd been causing problems all week, complaining, harassing the staff, demanding free perks because she considered herself a loyal guest. The manager had had enough, so she called security. We ended up with front row seats to the chaos. They found Linda at the pool, sipping an expensive drink she clearly couldn't afford. When security told her to leave, she completely lost it, screaming, crying, throwing things, cursing the staff, demanding to see the hotel owner, and even faking a medical emergency for sympathy. But it backfired when a manager calmly said, "Ma'am, the police have been called." Instantly, she went silent. She tried to run, literally, but security blocked her path, and Alex stared her down, saying, "You brought this on yourself." Step 5. The final blow. Linda was escorted off the property, banned from the hotel, humiliated in front of dozens of guests. Then she had to figure out how to get home, because Dad had finally had enough. After witnessing her attempt to ruin both of our lives, he snapped, booking his own separate flight home and leaving her stranded. With no credit card, no money, no way to catch a flight. She was completely stuck, and we ended up enjoying the rest of our vacation without her. After we got home, I followed through with the bank investigation. They confirmed that Linda had stolen thousands from both Alex and me over the years. We pressed charges, and guess what? She faced fraud charges. The court forced her to pay back every penny, and when she couldn't, they froze her accounts. She lost everything. Later, she called me, crying and begging for help, but I blocked her number. Sweet, sweet revenge. Now, years later, Alex and I are thriving. We have real financial security. We take vacations that we actually pay for. And Linda, she's still drowning in debt, still crying to anyone who will listen, still blaming everyone but herself. And we're finally free. And that, in the end, is the best revenge of all.